council work meeting session to order.
Make motion to adopt agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 3.
Mr. Mayor and council members, at the request of Councilmember Smith, we're bringing forward the 2027 law enforcement contracts we've included in the packet, which you did all receive, I'm assuming. The law enforcement contracts that I think there's 3 of them in here that we've had over the years with the sheriff's office. And it's kind of funny, I'm looking at the Scott Schulte chair, then and there's a crazy guy in here as a chair, right there. And then Mike Gamache, there's 4 of them actually. So wanted to, the question was kind of brought up about hours, and we have 36 hours right now that we contract with, and the question was kind of brought up of what would be like 18 and 24, and how would that play out in terms of cost to the city. I sent that email off to the county, and while they kind of powwowed a little bit, they all kind of came to the agreement that that the cost to try and generate these hours was significant. And so we decided then that what we would do is bring it back to a work session right here today and kind of talk about the contract as it is. You've had a chance to read through it. You'll be getting an update today on the council meeting, and kind of want to get feedback from the council as far as how they feel it's going, and if there's a need for reduction in in hours. I will say that this is the fence one. I will say that the sheriff is reluctant to reduce hours based on what they see and the calls they're getting in the community, some of which arguably are medical calls, but and some of them are calls that the sweeping car that goes through the whole county can cover. But largely it's based on the on-call deputies that we have here that are patrolling the city 36 hours. So at any rate, I just wanted to bring it up and get your feedback. If there's a consensus to pursue this, we can try pursuing it, but again, I think that there's a reluctance from the sheriff to provide anything less. So what are the options then? Well, there's always been a conversation about a northern police force, right? Northern Anoka County Police Force. You get towns like Bethel and Linwood that are currently contracting with the sheriff. Bethel I think is with St. Francis. Linwood is with the sheriff. But what would a Bethel, Linwood, East Bethel, Columbus, maybe Oak Grove look like for a regional police force? How would that pan out? Well, we don't know. We've never really put those numbers together. But that is certainly an option. The other option, of course, is to put together your own police force and hire your own deputies. Your insurance, obviously, for the city would change dramatically because one George Floyd scenario, and I think Minneapolis paid out $20 million on that one, so it can get very costly. So that's kind of very preliminary, but kind of laying the groundwork of where we're at with the contract. I would say if the sheriff was here, he would say that they believe that the current contract right now is required, mandatory, whatever, for this community, but you guys are the policymakers, so therein lies the discussion.
Well, when I looked at it, we decreased. We went from 7.6 for 2 years to 7.56, but we also increased to 10 overtime hours. And I was thinking, why do we even need the overtime hours? If we can get rid of anything, let's just keep what we've got, but get rid of the overtime hours. Because I do have a question. Don't they still get backup if they need backup? They're gonna get backup from the state or the county or another, Isani County or something if they absolutely feel they need it, if they're feel like they're going into a dangerous situation. Am I correct in that or am I incorrect?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of using the sheriff as a provider, is that they've got options, right? Whether it's dive teams or SWAT teams or whatever the case may be, they do have a larger bench, you know, to be able to draw from in the event of, a shooting of some sort or whatever the case may be, or active shooter, or somebody's held up in a house type of scenario. You hear some of those type of events that happen. If you were to have your own police force, it'd be difficult to respond with the numbers. And as far as mutual aid goes, something of that nature, the county's rather large. I mean, we're 36 square miles, and depending on where there's another available officer, who knows? They may dispatch, but it may take them 20 minutes to get here, and by then, anything's possible at that point.
I'm trying to figure out though why we need 36 hours a day. My own thought is that I see, well, just what I've seen just recently, actually between Quick Trip and Holiday one day, there's a sheriff's car sitting there. What he's doing, I have no idea. I mean, if he's taking radar or whatever, why is he doing this on a highway? And he's a Anoka County sheriff. So my thought is with their contract, they should be in our city patrolling our roads, not the highway. So it's like, I don't know how much of that stuff goes on. You know what I mean? And like Suzanne said too, if we had an emergency, we're gonna call 911, they're coming from everywhere. It's no different than if we're sitting here supposedly having 3 cars and Ham Lake calls, our guys are going there. So, I mean, it's like, I feel that we're paying for 36 hours when we really don't need to do that. I mean, we could reduce it to 24. I've checked with Oak Grove and they have 24 hours. Granted, their population is 9,577. And we're higher than that, we're at 12,000 or a little under.
Mm-hmm.
But they're basically $600,000 cheaper. So I really think we should look into the 24-hour thing. And I mean, for the sheriff to say that, basically I look at it like you're trying to hold us hostage. You know what I mean? It's like, we're the city and we should be looking at all alternatives on this. Every which way, because just like when I brought up the last meeting about the car, that was told that they buy us a car every year, okay? At the end of the year, we should have that car so we can sell it. You know, stuff like that, you can look into their contract and it's like, well, okay, this, that. Just because they've had this thing for many years doesn't mean that we don't have the right to look into it and say, hey, we don't need this. We don't feel we need this. And like I say, the protection's gonna be there if we need it. They're gonna come from everywhere. You know, and like I said, they should be patrolling our roads. And then I'm thinking too is, I would be willing to bet we should probably do an analysis and see how many are medical calls. It's not like, we're not like Blaine where they have issues, you know, with criminal stuff. We're up in East Bethel, I mean, we have, of course you get the meth heads and all that stuff, but whatever. We don't have the situation like down there. So in order for us to have, I mean, we're not gonna give up sheriff's protection. They're gonna be here. But I mean, if we can save the residents $500,000, I don't know why we wouldn't.
I will clarify one thing on the car. We did get an answer back on that. What's not included in this contract is damage that happens to the vehicles while they're in use. They had run a report on East Bethel and we had about $50-some thousand in damage to vehicles over 8 years period. And so the sheriff goes out and gets vehicles fixed and brings them back online. they don't bill us for those repairs. They use essentially the resale value of these used vehicles to cover
Yeah.
that expense.
But if you go through the contract too, we're paying for their insurance.
Yep.
So I
We
mean,
pay
most
for
of the
insurance
damages
and
stuff-
maintenance.
Yeah, we're paying for all that.
You-
So,
You don't pay for the deductible though, or, generally
Right, but
insurance is, complete loss type scenario. If somebody sideswipes a police car or whatever, you gotta get that body work fixed.
Right.
And they get pretty good rates actually from the companies that do the work for them, but that generally is less than the deductible at that point, and so somebody's gonna eat it, is what I'm saying.
right, I just don't want us eating it.
Right, so they don't include, because they don't know how many times they're gonna get sideswiped or
Right.
how much body work they're gonna need to have done, they just call that a wash in terms of the vehicles when they're sold, at auction. They don't reimburse us for, they don't say, okay, well, we got we had $50,000 worth of damage and $48,000 we got back on the vehicles, you owe us $2,000.
Right.
They just call it a wash at that point.
Yeah,
But how many times, in reality, have a vehicle in East Bethel been sideswiped, damaged, had their windows broken, Minneapolis, yeah, you see that every day with
Oh,
these
yeah.
protests and stuff, but out here, we don't see that.
They ran a report, there's $50,000 on average a year
From East Bethel.
from East Bethel. So,
Hitting deers, whatever.
could be taking rocks to windshields, could be a whole, who knows?
I can remember years back, we peeled a deputy out of a car that got T-boned at Klondike at 65. It happens, you can't,
oh, right,
you can't say when,
unavoidable, you just
it
don't know.
happens.
That's actually one of the fears of our fire department when we don't have a backup fire engine, is that if that gets T-boned in an intersection while on a call and lights are going and someone T-bones them by accident, we're in big trouble because we got a vehicle down now and
Right.
it's a year to get one of these trucks replaced, A little different for this, but, the sheriff can then allocate a different vehicle to East Bethel during the hours and, either get a new one going or get the one fixed or, they have floaters. But,
So can we
that was the explanation on the car.
Yeah.
I'm
So
the
can we-
messenger.
As far as like the hours and stuff, can we request their calls, what they're doing?
Well, in the presentation this evening, where did that go? They will cover some of those calls.
Oh, yeah, this thing here.
And
But all they're doing is putting on, stuff like they're arresting people and stuff like that.
yeah, they're kind of giving you so I responded to 451 calls for service, 1 salt, 5 theft reports, and 4 damaged property calls,
Right.
16 arrests for miscellaneous offenses, 159 traffic stops, 25 traffic citations. So,
Right.
one good question this evening, because they're going to be presenting, is how many medical calls
Right.
did we have this last month, or whatever the case is. I think they respond very similar to our fire department, just about every medical call in the
Right.
event that they're needed.
Right.
And
They
that's a discussion that we're having with fire too, do you need to go to every
Right.
medical call, But, yeah.
As soon as that call's in at 911, you're gonna get, the ambulance gets dispatched, fire gets dispatched,
Yeah.
and so does police, automatic,
Oh, yeah. All
every
of them.
time. And then if they don't need them, they'll cancel them sometime en route or whatever, but it automatically triggers all 3 of them.
Right.
So just taking the 451 calls for service in 1 month, divide that by 3 for the 3 deputies that cover the 36 hours. They're covering 150 calls apiece per month. Divide that by average of 30 days. Each deputy is responding to 5 calls a day.
And sometimes when you see a deputy sitting somewhere, they could be on break, they could be writing reports, you know,
All right.
they could be radar, you know, doing radar for vehicles, traffic monitoring.
Yeah, the documentation part of this whole thing, it's pretty extensive.
Right. Yeah, they've got the computer modules in their cars for doing all the report taking and
part of it's just being out there.
a presence.
Being a presence.
Yeah. That's gotta be a deterrent for some folks.
Now, there's a reason some cities put up car or plywood cutouts of cop cars.
You know, this doesn't apply to me, but I know when some people are driving, they'll, you know, they see a cop, they'll slow down. I
Yep.
don't need to, but.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, we can ask them. I do want to say that they will probably be some pushback on providing less than 36.
That's fine, I have no problem with it. I wanna be included with the negotiation with them. Cause it's like they need to me, it's like 1.6 million. It's nuts. It's crazy when you start looking at the other cities too. I understand the population is different, but still, like I said, we're not Blaine or anywhere where we need the police to help us because of all the crime and all that stuff going on. We don't have that here. So,
I think if you did a cost analysis, you'd really have, you know, if you wanted your own department and that, and I think they did this years back here in East Bevel, because they
Oh,
were
yeah.
looking at this, that just the startup cost is so astronomical.
oh, yeah, it's crazy. I know, cause I checked in
It's
with,
crazy.
I checked with St. Francis too to see if they'd be interested in partnering, cause they have their own police.
Yeah.
But then the expense with them, also you gotta add more cars, more cops,
Yep.
so it wasn't efficient for them to do
No.
it either.
It all adds up.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
you'd have to have a regional Anoka County force of some sort to really have economies of scale. And that's a possibility. It's just coordinating all the cities to do that is where the, you know, negotiation lies. But it's, yeah, it'd be a challenge to put that together and keep it together without infighting.
Oh, yeah. Cause it never gets any cheaper, that's the whole thing.
No, it don't get any cheaper, and then the other issue is, you know, if you do decrease the hours, the service to the residents, how is that gonna affect them?
See, that's what I mean though, it's like, I don't look at it that way because if you need it, they're gonna be there.
They
Like I
should
said
be.
before, I
They
mean,
should be, yes.
If the 3 cops aren't here, they're in Ham Lake, it's no different, you know what I mean? So they're not guaranteeing that they're gonna be here for those 36 hours either. That's the whole thing. That's my thought with that.
Yeah, I think it's 36 hours in a 24-hour period.
Right.
There's 3 cops, but there's overlap.
Yeah, you got
And-
3 shifts that
And
overlap.
Part of the challenge that we have, being that we're, I would say, at least a half an hour from the jail, is that you pull somebody over on a DWI, bring him to Anoka County Jail in the city of Anoka, your city is down now as far as, you know, law enforcement goes.
Right, one car.
For not only the half hour each way, but the booking time, which is
Right.
significant, depending on who else is in line, so to speak,
Right,
to get booked in.
yeah,
And they could be there for 3-4 hours, easy. Or I mean, 3-4 hours total, which means they're off the street. Well, one of the benefits of that is, yeah, we get something serious here and a Ham Lake deputy could respond. If there's nothing
Right.
happening in Ham Lake, there's some economies there that we can benefit from. And vice versa too. I mean,
Right.
I think if Ham Lakes was at the jail detained, you know, we'd probably be
Yeah,
helping
we'll
there
go
too.
Right,
But I don't know that, you know, so largely speaking, aside from the overlap, you have one deputy, you know, in the city working at any one time.
right. Like I said though, I'll be in negotiation, let's do it. Don't hurt to ask. I mean, to me, the taxpayers are paying dearly. If we can save money, that's what I'm all about.
I tend to agree. I think we're overprotected.
Well, maybe Jim and Suzanne and Matt, you get Mr. Wise out here and have a sit-down meeting
Yep,
and then report back.
yep, no
Sounds
problem.
like a
I think
plan.
that would be a good idea.
I agree.
Okay?
Yep.
Matt, you can set that up?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next one, fence ordinance.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, we have the fence ordinance here, and the next two were proposed by Councilmember Urkel to bring to work session here to discuss kind of what our current fence ordinance is and what our current parking ordinance is for vehicles. Fence height is was kind of the issue, as I understand, for residential. We have a fence height of 4 feet if it's on your driveway side. You can have up to 4 feet fence. On the side of your house, you can have up to 6-foot fence. And I think where the challenge has come in is on 22. There's some homes that are on 22 and can have a 6-foot fence, but their driveway is off on a side street. And there's some homes that abut 22 that have to have a 4-foot fence then. And then I think what the challenge then is, if I'm not mistaken, it's sound abatement and maybe light or something like that. So, so this is what our code is currently. And part of the challenges, staff met and talked a little bit about this. Part of the challenges as we foresee is if you had neighborhoods with 4-foot fences in their front yards, it would look kind of like a alleyway. And that may be why the common code is 4 feet, a lot of these codes we didn't invent, we copied from other communities, or
Yep.
what's best management practice perhaps. But at any rate, wanted to bring it for discussion to get some dialogue on this to determine where the council's at. Do you want us to modify the ordinance? Do you want to, how many people would this impact? That sort of thing.
So my proposal is if the speed limit is over 45 miles an hour, which would mean you're probably having big trucks and loud motorcycles and those kind of vehicles zooming past your house, and people cannot watch TV with their window open because of the loud noise, and the fumes are coming into their homes on these diesel trucks and some of the other vehicles that pollute. And we've had complaints, and I had a guy in here last time who begged and begged us to let him have, in fact, he had paid for a 6-foot fence, and they made him take it down and put up a 4-foot fence. But sitting in somebody's driveway watching these vehicles go by, it's loud, and I don't understand why, if my driveway faces Viking Boulevard, why can't I have a 6-foot fence when neighbors on both sides of me have 6-foot fence? I think there should be a standard that it's appealing, that it, that it's not pallets that they're stacking up. You'd see some people who do foliage and just to block some of it, but that doesn't even do a whole lot when it comes to these vehicles, these big trucks and stuff. So I think it's probably the best way I can say it is if it's over 45 miles an hour, they can, and the ordinance can specify that you can have that. Now, I don't know about areas like Whispering Aspens or places where those mobile homes are. That might need some different, analysis, because I don't know if that would work there, but on regular residential homes, yeah, I think it would be important to appease these people who are having issues with the noise. And I've talked to a lot of people on biking, and so it would be on biking on East Bethel Boulevard, on 15 and 74 and 221st maybe. There's not a lot of roads that we have those high speed limits.
Basically, your county roads.
Yeah,
As far as Whispering Aspen and some of the other sewer and water areas, typically what I've seen is they're just fencing the backyard.
yeah, yeah.
So
And I don't think it
it wouldn't
needs to apply
that.
to them because, well, like Elevage is not on, they might get a lot of 65 noise, but they also have Sand Hill, so they wouldn't qualify for the 45-mile-an-hour rule.
But then that'd be the backyards that they're fencing in so they could do the.
Well,
6
not
foot.
all of them, but most of them, yeah. I did have somebody complain who lives a mile in from 65, and she says the noise is horrendous, so I'm like, well, I can't help you with that one.
Noise is horrendous on 22 alone, period, nowadays.
Yeah,
There's a lot more traffic.
So you'll
And
get
I only live 2 blocks
Yeah.
in,
so it's just a proposal.
and I got
I
2
realize,
houses and trees buffering everything,
yeah,
and you still hear it. And if they're gonna go 6 feet, as far as looks and everything, they gotta require a permit anyway, so
well,
that,
I thought it said 8 feet for a permit, or
No,
did I read
6
that
feet.
wrong?
anything over 6 feet in height, it's right there, and,
Over 6, yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't say 6.
item B right there explains it.
But I don't, I mean, even up to 8 foot for some of these roads, I wouldn't care if, but a permit, you know, where the city would have to go and evaluate it.
Just change it to county roads.
Yeah, well, do we have any county roads that are slower than 55?
No,
Oh, yeah, county roads. Works for me.
because each case is gonna present a whole different issue, I mean, you know, depending on the person, you know.
Yeah, and they don't have to, it's
No.
not like we're mandating they do it, but for the people who have medical issues and who don't have AC or don't want to run their AC in the summertime or on a nice cool day, you know, in the fall and want to keep their windows open, it's a benefit if they can. And I don't even know how many people would apply, because you do have people who live in big fancy houses and keep their property immaculate and like to show it off, you know, and then you have people who have big fancy houses and immaculate yards and don't like to show it off either and like the peace and quiet and move out here for peace and quiet and find out, you know, they see their property at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 11 o'clock in the morning and there's no traffic, and then come 4 or 5 o'clock, it's crazy.
So, well, we could change it to being allowed on a county road. Same with the 4 foot, provided they comply with traffic visibility requirements. 'Cause we wouldn't want to be kind of off line of sight.
Oh, right, yeah, that would definitely have to be a certain
Yep.
area from the road, so that if a car's coming out, they can see both directions, and both directions can see the car.
And I'm guessing that even a 4 foot fence would have to, cannot be placed in right away. So that apply to 6 foot as well.
Anything else on this?
Well, we can certainly take a look at this, consider what
Where-
properties,
Where you could add the county part of it and,
yeah, what
Spell it out.
properties might be impacted with driveways on county roads. And then run it through planning and zoning and see what they have for comments on and go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
yep.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Item 5, 5-car rule.
Okay, second item was the 5-car rule, and we included on here the off-street parking and loading requirements, part of the appendix. And trying to find the exact location in here. Wanted to include the entire code for you so that you can see how, or what thought has gone into the code that we currently have. And bear with me a second here. Oh, not loading. Parking residential, off-street parking. So one of the challenges that we have right now is parking on unimproved surfaces. And a lot of driveways, I think, can only hold so many vehicles to begin with. And if there are more vehicles in the house than a driveway allows for, you have people parking on unimproved surfaces. And at that point, you have a violation of the code essentially. And sometimes we are a complaint-based community, so sometimes neighbors call and complain about that, people parking on their lawns. And so we allow up to 5, and I'm just trying to find that
It's 3B
3B
on
right
page
here. Here we go.
43, I think.
And it kind of defines some of the snowmobile trailer accommodations, lawn equipment, construction equipment, other equipment or trailers, recreational vehicles. Maximum of 5 of the following must be parked on designated driveways on improved surface, road or storage area located in a side or rear yard.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ridiculous giving a limit and rather than the condition of property. And as far as the surface they're stored on, I think gravel would be also that they could put down gravel in between, like a
believe that's
garage,
improved.
next to a garage, and it doesn't have to be asphalt. I think requiring it to be asphalt is an expense that, especially as expensive as asphalt is right now, I think that doesn't need to be, and I think if people want to put it on gravel, that should be okay, but I think that it's not reasonable to have it listed as recreational vehicles, boats, snowmobiles, lawn equipment, construction equipment, trailers, or a combination, limit to 5. Because right now, we have kids moving back home, parents living back home. You have whole families, they all drive. That's 10 cars if you have couples, the owner, the wife, the son, the wife, the mom, the dad, each has a vehicle. Then you have lawnmowers, and you have boats, and you have campers, and you have everything. And I don't think we should limit it to 5. I think we could stipulate condition of vehicles, because I understand that we don't want junk vehicles sitting in people's property. We don't want people doing neighborhood car maintenance on everybody's vehicle, changing their oils and stuff like that. But I just think this is almost ridiculous, and I've kind of researched a couple other cities, and a lot of them do not have it. I think Ham Lake had it for a while, and then they didn't have it, they had it, and they got rid of it, because it just doesn't make any sense. And I think property size should be taken into consideration too. If you have a small lot over in Capstone or Elevage or Whispering Aspen, yeah, you don't want to have, 10 vehicles on, you wouldn't have any yard available. Everything would be parked. But if you have half an acre, 3 acres, 10 acres, you should be able to park anything you want outside if you want to, rather than be forced to store it, another expense on our taxpayers, or build a pole barn or something to put it in. And who does it say pole barns are not the best looking things, on a property, especially the size of property. So I think we should put conditions and not a number in there.
Well, the way I'm reading this, it states a maximum of 5 of the following vehicles: recreational, boat trailer, snowmobile, etc. Those following vehicles do not include cars or trucks.
And then up to 2 automobiles or other motor vehicles, or 2 snowmobiles or all-terrain vehicles may be located or displayed on any property for the purpose of sale. Okay, so it's talking about sale.
Yep. So
And it does address inoperable vehicles.
Yep.
Currently not licensed by the state, incapable of movement under their own power due to mechanical deficiency, which are parked or stored or outside for a period in excess of 96 hours, and all materials stored outside in violation of the city ordinances are considered refuse or junk and shall be disposed of according to city regulations.
Yeah, the way I read this is it restricts where to park, but not the amount of cars or trucks. So the only place that I could find it is under the Rural Residential District, Section 42, Item 5, interim uses, 5C. The following interim uses are permitted in the Rural Residential District with the interim use permit: outside storage of more than 5 vehicles, recreational vehicles, items of equipment, or trailers. That's the only place that I could find it addressed, not in the ordinance that we're looking at. And frankly, my viewpoint on this is, if the scenarios that you said, that you have kids, you have 4 kids that they're driving age, they move back, you have 6, 7, 8 cars in a driveway. If it's not a nuisance, I don't really care.
Yeah, I don't care either.
Where we have the ordinances is in the situations where it does become a nuisance, we need to have some sort of ordinance that we can enact to discourage that nuisance.
And that's where the complaint basis comes in.
Yeah, because I did get a complaint, and I don't know if the city got it because I redirected them to the city, about vehicles. They said there's multiple families living in this house. It's over near the school somewhere. And that they're parking on the road. They've got multiple cars and multiple lawn equipment and recreational equipment in their yard. That's what the guy said. I didn't know the address, so I couldn't go look at it. But I directed them to the city, and I said, the city is based on complaints, so you have to go there. But I was thinking that if I brought this up, if this is the ordinance they were referring to, it could reduce city staff time addressing these complaints, because if it's not a nuisance, I mean, I don't care what my neighbor has, if he has boats or lawnmowers and four-wheelers and campers and all that stuff in his yard, it doesn't bother me. And I don't know why it would bother anybody else if there's more than 5. Because some people have
Everybody has different.
fancy cars in their garage.
Everybody has different
you know?
expectations of themselves and their neighbors. It's the world we live in.
Oh, well, it's something to think about. We don't have to decide on it tonight, but I did want to bring it up. That I think the number 5 is accept an arbitrary number, and it should be reconsidered.
Well, like I said, if they aren't causing an issue, I really don't care, but in the small amount of cases where there is an issue, that we need an ordinance that we can fall back on to enforce.
We can deal with that with a case-by-case situation too. I feel the same way you guys do too. It's not hurting anybody's whatever. It doesn't bother me at all.
But we do have issues where neighbors are
Right.
bickering over any little thing, and this person has a light in their yard and it's pointing to my house and I don't like it, and where's the ordinance for that? And just
You're
they
always
will
gonna have
bring
that.
each other. I mean, we've
Yeah.
dealt with them.
You're always gonna have that.
Yeah, if everybody had 80 acres to live on, we probably wouldn't need as many ordinances, but fortunately we don't.
And I think that's really the issue is, the more acreage you have, the less concern people have, but the tighter the neighborhoods are. We brought up Tri-Oak and earlier this evening, and it seems like there's always someone pointing at somebody doing something. And
Yep.
I remember a former council member with a fence that was built that on the prior fence thing that he's still pretty sore about. Yeah, the tighter these homes get, the more useful these ordinances become, because you're going to have a lot more complaints. But your larger lots, of course, wooded or whatever the case is, no one can even see what they have for the most part. Then you have the extreme violators, and I don't know the gentleman's name, but lived over by Councilmember Miller with quite a few vehicles in his yard, from what I recall. So those are the anomalies, shall we call them? But yeah, there is. In Minnesota, you've got seasons, right? And you have toys for seasons, and they add up. Just part of life, Your boat's not going to be in the water in the winter.
No.
So unless you live down south.
All right.
We'll just play it by ear, see if how many complaints come in, type of thing, and see if we need to ratchet this one up. But otherwise, keep what we have right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. The thing is, the complaints too, make sure they're written. Otherwise, I mean,
Yeah,
we wasted so much time.
we always recommend that they're written to qualify as a complaint, and and then we have a process that we go through. There's 3 letters sent out, and we're hoping for compliance, and then there's fines that are sent out, and we're hoping for payment of those fines, and eventually it gets to a council decision of what folks want to do. Is it do we prosecute? Is it abatement? How do we want to handle this? So you're no strangers to that in terms of some of the discussions we've had recently. So okay.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else? Need a motion for adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 15 minutes. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the August 24th, 2026 council meeting to order. Please rise if you can for the pledge.
Make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with the addition of item E under the consent agenda. Item E is the supplemental payment summary.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Anoka County Sheriff.
Good evening, council. July, we responded to a total of 451 calls for service. We had 1 assault, 5 theft reports, and 4 damage to property calls. We had a total of 16 arrests made within the city limits. We conducted 159 traffic stops, which resulted in 25 traffic citations. Some of our notable calls: on the 4th of July at 11:28 p.m., Deputy Martinez responded to a 2-car crash at Highway 65 at Klondike. Remarks on the call stated that one of the vehicles appeared to be attempting to leave the scene while the other was stuck in the ditch. Once he arrived, Deputy Martinez contacted the drivers of both of those vehicles and determined that nobody was hurt, thankfully. While he was speaking with both of these drivers, each of them showed signs of impairment and asked them to perform standardized field sobriety tests. Both of the drivers that were asked to do that failed and were asked to provide PBTs. One of the drivers refused that ask and then provided. The second driver later submitted to a sample, which resulted in a .228 BAC. So both drivers were ultimately arrested and transported to the Anoka County Sheriff's Office, where each driver provided evidentiary breath samples. The results of those tests were .14 and .18 respectively. Both drivers were booked into our jail on charges of 2nd and 3rd degree DWI. So it sounds like 2 drivers that didn't know each other traveling northbound on 65 hit each other, and both were impaired, which resulted in 2 arrests for us. On the 6th of July at 4:55 p.m., Deputy Madsen was dispatched to a vehicle theft report. The reporting party was an employee of a car lot along Highway 65 who reported one of his vehicles missing. The reporting party said that the vehicle was left in front of the business with the keys in the ignition. Deputy Madsen collected that information and entered the vehicle as a stolen. While he was checking the area, the original reporting party called back to report that an unknown vehicle was now parked in front of his lot and that it didn't belong to the business or any of the employees. Deputy Madsen responded to that scene and determined that that vehicle that had been left behind was listed as a stolen out of the city of Burnsville. It appears that the stolen vehicle from Burnsville was driven to East Bethel, dumped here while the thief stole another car from one of our lots, and that is what generated our initial call for service. We later learned that the owner of the vehicle's cards were fraudulently used at the Quick Trip just across the street. We currently don't have any suspects at this point in time, but we are working on going through some video footage, so we continue to investigate that matter. That case is pending for us out of last month. And then finally, on the 19th of July, Deputy Johnson attempted to stop a vehicle for speeding along Highway 65. The vehicle continued a short distance and pulled into the Holiday gas station parking lot. The driver immediately got out of the vehicle and attempted to walk into the store. Deputies Johnson and Gruey told the male driver to stop, which he did, but became argumentative with the deputies who were there. The deputies attempted to handcuff the male, at which point the male resisted and began to tense up and pull away. Deputies struggled with this person for approximately 3 minutes from what we could see on our squad cameras. During that struggle, a knife was removed from the belt line of this person, and one of our deputies received a laceration to his leg as a result of this. The male driver was eventually taken into custody and transported to jail on charges of assault. So thankfully, no one was seriously injured because of this altercation. Our deputy was transported to the hospital, received care for that laceration to his leg, and we were able to move on from there. So thankfully, it wasn't worse than it could have been knowing the information that we have now. So September is nearly upon us, which means our open house is just around the corner. So I'd like to invite anybody that's available to come join us on Thursday, September 24th, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Sheriff's Office in Andover. There will be food trucks and a number of public safety demonstrations that we put on, including SWAT, Marine Unit, and K-9. So check our social media pages for more details on that.
Any questions for a deputy?
Yeah, hey, I noticed the numbers year to date are down, but under burglaries, there's an increase. Is there any similarities amongst those that maybe residents should be aware of?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that stuff is going to be daytime based. A lot of our burglaries happen during the day when people are at work. I think the conclusions that you can draw from that is simply when people are gone, just double check your stuff, make sure that you lock your house, make sure your keys are out of your car. We had some of those vehicles stolen from the lots along 65 there. Make sure that that stuff is secured. Get a good working camera system. If anything comes up, our investigators have the capability to download that information and further our investigation. Back in the day, we didn't have that. It was kind of new when I was working patrol in the city. So those are all good tactics that you can use as residents within the city to make sure that you have some equipment that supports us moving forward down the line. And definitely, as I always say, call us if you have something. If you see something, we'll come out. We'll drive around. If it's a phone call report, or if you want to just talk to a deputy, that's one thing. But if you want somebody to come out, verbalize that to the dispatcher. Sometimes we have that confusion where the deputy thinks they can handle it by phone. Let's not do that. Let's get a black and white down your street, and we'll get into the area and check it out.
Thank you for that.
So I have a question. You guys had 159 traffic stops, but only 25 citations. That seems like not very well balanced. What is going on with that?
Yeah, so that's going to depend on some of the discretionary measures that are afforded to the deputies. We get a new crew every single year in the city, so sometimes we get new deputies that are learning the ropes a little bit, maybe perhaps, and then we get some very experienced deputies who might focus their energies elsewhere. So last year at this point in time, we had a lot of new deputies that were writing a lot of traffic violations. This year we have some senior folks. They're working on some of that narcotics, some of the things that we have going in and out of our streets and our neighborhoods in that regard that might lower that traffic number. But we certainly expect our folks to be out there and remain visible to our citizens. A lot of that too is going to be, like I said before, discretionary. So the deputies aren't told that they have to write a certain number of tickets. We allow them that discretionary measure. And certainly we want to change bad behavior on our roadways. So if we've got somebody, let's say a 16-year-old kid that might deserve a break on something, or a soccer mom going to soccer, we're going to take the time to educate rather than enforce. So we see these swings every now and again. We see these in all of our cities, and I think it's cyclical. I think it'll come back.
So you think that was mostly speeding that they let go?
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire chief.
Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me. So one thing, this report will be a little bit shorter just because I had been doing these reports from the date of the last council meeting until this current council meeting. We're now doing just the month, so July 1st through July 31st. So some of the numbers might look a little familiar just because it encapsulates most of July, which we talked about last month. But we did 76 total calls, 12 shortness of breath, 7 unconscious, and 6 heart issues on the medical side. And on the fire side, we saw 6 vehicle crashes and 1 structure fire that was a mutual aid response to the Rum River Fire District. We are gearing up for Fire Prevention Week. Schools are getting on the calendar. We're looking forward to getting out there and hanging out with the kids and showing them the trucks and talking fire safety with them. Our open house is October 5th, starting at 5 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. Come on out. We're working on increasing our community partnerships and getting more vendors out there and more participation from outside people, just to showcase the public safety that we have and the different opportunities that are out there. We were invited to the East Bethel Farmers Market by the organizer. Her name escapes me right now, and I apologize for that. But we've been trying to get out there each week. We've been out there 2 weeks in a row. We had a crew that was out there for 4 hours today and ran out of materials to hand out, so that means they're coming in contact with a lot of kids and a lot of families. So that's been fun for us. We've been able to just kind of get out and mingle with the community. And then as far as anything else goes, we're continuing to work through a bunch of small projects, updating small hand tools and such. And then one of the slightly bigger ones, we'll be changing out our computers for iPads. This will mark a move from our current cell provider to AT&T FirstNet, which in the event of an emergency, widespread emergency, will give us priority access to cell service and cell towers in the area. It'll upgrade our equipment, it'll lower our monthly bill, and it also coincides with a change at dispatch as they transition into a new technology for computer-aided dispatching. So, all in all, it's gonna be a win. It's just gonna be a little bit of a process here. We'll have everything in place by Halloween.
All right, anybody else got questions?
Can you give the date and time for your open house again?
October 5th, 5 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. And we'll be putting stuff out on social media, and I'll make sure to mention it again next month.
All right. Great. It's always a good event. I always like attending that.
I saw your fire engine at the farmer's market, so I was going to ask about that, so thanks for the update. I do want to ask about the switch over. Are you Verizon right now, and you're switching to AT&T? Have you tested the AT&T before you switch, or is it just a cost thing? Because I've tried AT&T out here, and it doesn't work.
I will double check that. We haven't signed any contracts or anything. According to AT&T, they put a tower out in this area, so the coverage is
Okay.
increased significantly. I will definitely double check
Test
that.
it, because T-Mobile doesn't work out here, neither did AT&T. But if they put a tower, it may have changed. It's been a few years since I've tried them.
I will double check. Again, we haven't signed anything. This is just we're testing out different things to make sure it's going to work, but I will make sure we test that out.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, public forum. Nancy Hager, I remind you of 3 minutes. Try and hold it to. Please pronounce your name, address, and everything up here. Speak into the speaker, please.
3 minutes?
Well, try and keep it to that, yes.
Okay. Nancy Hager is my name. Would you say you need me to spell it?
No.
No? Okay.
Address?
Pretty easy. 707 199th Avenue Northeast in Cedar. And I don't know, I guess my deal is pretty black and white. I live in a dead-end neighborhood in the Cedar Brook addition. In the last 3 years, I've noticed, and I never put 2 and 2 together, but there were just a lot of trucks going by, and I kept thinking people were building houses or doing something. And then I noticed that they were all Williams Landscaping. And as of today, I have about 5 trucks that go by my house. And they're big trucks. Some of them are semis, and the most disturbing one, okay, well, first of all, our roads were awful. And I had told Nick about the roads, and he said, yeah, with these trucks, we're gonna have to get a handle on it before, or the roads are gonna go bad again. And so we now have our roads done, and I have at least five. I have a security system in my house, and I see them, and I've started sending all my pictures to Matt. And the most disturbing part of it probably is the big fuel tanker trucks that go back there. So I don't know if they're storing gasoline, which is a whole nother issue, you know, I mean, what if we have pollution then after that? But I mean, there's definitely 2 blocks from me at 550, they have a big, you know, they've got a website, Williams Landscaping, and all the trucks, they start at 6 a.m. and they come back about, well, they're usually done by like 6:30, but they go by and I have 5, at least 5. Some are semis, other ones are big trucks with a trailer with all their stuff. And A, our roads are gonna be ruined again. B, I don't really know how they can have, like Nick said when they moved in, he said he went on the property to do the last inspection and he could kind of tell, and he said, you know, you can't have a business run out of this address. And they said, oh no, we know. Well, obviously, they've been in business for 20 years and they decided to move to East Bethel, 2 blocks from me. And I've got all those really heavy trucks. We just got I mean, my husband was bike riding one day and one whipped by him. Little kids go on their bikes. It's just, our roads are gonna be ruined, first of all. And I don't really see how they can be there. It's just become a really big irritation. I mean, I moved my cameras so that I could show Matt, and you've gotten all the pictures of the trucks. They're big damn trucks, aren't they? And my roads are gonna be ruined. Yet they say, we can't go on their property, we can't do anything about it. So I don't know I just want guidance on what could a person do about it? Because I don't think it should continue. Great big trucks like that, they're big construction trucks, all the way up to semi trucks. And they're going right in there, right out, right in there. 5, 6 times a day, every day.
Have you filled out a complaint form yet?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe she has, and I believe, like she says, Nick went over there, but we can't really go in there. We've issued him a letter. I believe he called Eric first, and Eric referred him to Nick. I know there's been a phone call between them, but I don't know where we're at right now.
Yeah, Nick said that they sent a letter the 19th of June. He said, so, you know, they actually have a month.
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, that'll be, he said, so mark your calendar. So that would be the 19th of July, and nothing ever changed. And now we're past the 19th of August. I
Okay.
think he said that legally or something, they have to at least have 3 letters or something, he told
Yep.
me. But I don't know if they had gotten but I mean, it's just wrong.
Yeah. We'll do a
And our
staff,
roads are so beautiful right now.
we'll do a staff follow-up on it and
I
get back to you.
appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lewis?
To respect your time, I wrote it down, so I'll just read it. First question I have, basically I have 2 questions. Artie, what is the current market value of selling your integrity and your humanity? In other words, what is your motivation to participate in an evil scheme to sell out your late fellow city council member, Tim Miller, and his grieving widow, Stacy, in front of some of their children and grandchildren at the last city council meeting? Second question is for you, Dino. I checked your Facebook page and saw that you're an active member of Our Savior Lutheran Church. Outstanding. So please tell me, if our Lord were standing right here, right now in the flesh, what do you think he would say to you about your participation in this scheme? Think it would be, well done, good and faithful servant? More likely, he'd ask you, what are you doing, Dino? And why are you doing it? Final thought. Luke 12, chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. Whatever is said or done in the dark will eventually be brought into the open light. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Don Savigli. I I don't know if I
Signy.
I think I butchered it, but.
It's Svigny.
Sivany.
Sivany?
Yeah, the G's silent. It's French. Yeah, so, that's a tough act to follow. I'm Don Sivany. I live on Madison Street. I'm gonna kind of continue where Nancy left off, and I will tell you, everything she said is 100% accurate. I personally watched like, you know what a belly dump is? These are the side dumps. Come in with boulders the size of pickup trucks. Drive back in there and dump them. Those are less than 3-ton roads. The city's engineer told us those roads weren't even put in at standards at 3-ton. And yes, thank you for putting the coating on them. My mechanic started wondering if I moved to a minimum maintenance road with the front end stuff that was going on in my vehicles. And we're just kind of growing tired of it. We posted some things on Facebook. People said, why don't you go talk to them? We're getting harassed already. I mean, they go by Nancy's house in the middle of the day, night or early morning and stuff and honk their horns when they're going by. Nothing against Williams Landscaping. Their website and everything looks like they do a great job. They're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Their website says that. Do an aerial shot of their place. There's boulders and things back there. There's fuel tanks back there. There's an accessory structure that should be accessory to the home that is not accessory to the home. They're using it for business purposes. Nick told me the same thing when I reached out to Nick. And he said, they were told when we gave him, before we gave him the C of O, you can't run a business out of here. He said, I was directed to tell them that, and I did. And so I think it isn't what we can do, it's what you have to do. And it's time this company moves to the district where it belongs, out on the highway, out in the commercial district. Plus, the tax dollars are there. A city doesn't survive on residential taxes alone. Land use and zoning have done a lot of that in my career, and I will tell you that doesn't happen. You need the business district and you need them there. I'm gonna start sending the bills to the city for my car repairs when the roads go bad again, because it's not right. It's not right. We're paying for it. As citizens in that neighborhood, we're paying taxes, we're doing everything else, and they're reaping the benefits. You know, we talk about fraud in government these days. This is really bordering very close to that. They should be out on the commercial district and paying the commercial taxes. If their business is that great, hey, hats off. I love to see that. But I mean, when I went through your ordinances, I just took a quick look last night for about an hour and a half on online, and I could find 6 or 8 items in here that I could argue very effectively to tell you they shouldn't be there. But again, it's not what we have to do. I worked for a city years ago where I was doing the property maintenance code things on a lot of places. You can go on their property. You just have to follow the proper steps. We keep hearing, no, we can't go on their property. You can. We have law enforcement here who can go with you. That's part of their job, to see what's really going on. The neighborhood doesn't want to speak up because they get harassed, just like we are now that we spoke up. My wife has been called names. She's been called an alcoholic on the websites and on the Facebook and things. My wife doesn't drink a drop. Neither do I. Okay, yeah. Breakfast. Other than breakfast, how's that? Other than for breakfast. But we're not that way. We don't do that. And we don't need the harassment from them. I don't have any problem with them as a company or them as people. But get your business that's so successful, put it where it belongs. It belongs out in the commercial district, not in the residential rural where it's sitting right now.
Well, the little kids when they're on their little
I'm up here to do that, dear. Oh. You can't do it from the audience, sorry.
Please wrap it up.
So, I mean, again, it's something that you all need to do and maybe get them in here. I'd love to sit in on a meeting with you guys and them and say, what are you doing? Why aren't you there? I think we have that right as other citizens to actually, and they have the right to face us. That's fine, but I'm not gonna do it on the street. The way we're getting harassed now, that wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be good, because then law enforcement would probably be out because it may get out of hand, and I don't want that to happen either. But it's time the council steps in and does something here. We've been complaining about it for a long time. Our roads finally got done. Hidden Haven's had theirs done 3 times since we've been living there. This is the first time ours got redone. I just want to be treated like it's fair and equal treatment is what we're looking for. And that's what we're supposed to do in government. I'm just asking you to give us the same treatment you would anybody else and have them do what they're supposed to do. And why do we have rules?
Okay.
Statutes, rules, and ordinances. You guys enforce ordinances. And we need to enforce them. You don't make the rules if you're not going to enforce them. Otherwise, I'm gonna start a car repair shop or a car shop where like you pull our parts in my yard, make a lot of money. I could do that, and you couldn't tell me no because you're letting him do it. That's what's gonna happen. No.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, I know.
Item 6, consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
With item
Second, and I'd like to pull item D.
I'm gonna pull C.
D and C, your amendment including the new A, or E, I mean?
Yep. That includes item E.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion as amended?
That motion was made.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item C, I believe, was the first one.
Yeah, C, I would like to table these minutes. I'll meet with staff and go over it. I think needs to be a lot more added to it. So I'll meet with staff on that.
So we're gonna table C.
Need a motion for that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to table C.
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion? None being heard, all in favor? Item D.
Item D is the approval of hire of seasonal ice arena attendants. It seems like there's a lot more people we are hiring. Maybe I'm incorrect, but is this a lot more than what we usually have back there? Because I thought we only had like 3 or 4, and this is 6 or so,
Not that I'm aware of.
7. Okay. I was just curious because I don't remember having that many names in the past.
They don't necessarily all work at the same time. We're just trying to fill the schedule, make sure that we have someone to staff.
Okay, and it's all out of the ice arena budget, so.
Right.
All right, with that, I'll make a motion to approve item D of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion on it? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
None. 8A. Eric.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In your packet and under this item, there is a consideration of a final development agreement between the city and Final Approach as part of their East Bethel plat that the council reviewed at your last session, which also included the site plan review, the pre and final plat. And ultimately, to enable all of those development pieces, a development agreement is required. The entire document is in your packet. Ultimately, that lists all the responsibilities of both the developer and the city, but fundamentally rely on the developer to install the road, provide the utility extensions, pay for all the design, the engineering, oversight of the project by the city engineer, installing all the stormwater and drainage improvements, securing all the easements. And so a developer's agreement is a pretty standard tool to make those things happen. But I would note 2 interesting items, I think noteworthy, I guess. There is a provision under item 12.7. It's a short provision that basically requires the developer and the city to enter into a pilot understanding or payment in lieu of taxes. So in the event that project or that property would turn into a nonprofit or potentially a complete facility and owned by a place of worship or other nonprofit, the property owner would be required at that time to make a payment to the city equivalent to what it otherwise would be for the city's share of those costs, or the city's share of those annual taxes. What is the likelihood of that? Hard to say. Certainly it's up to the developer at some point in the future if they ever decide to sell. But something to consider as a large tenant as they proceed in the short term is a church, is a place of worship. So maybe they want to sell and who knows what happens, but the pilot agreement is pretty standard. And lastly, or a second interesting piece is, city does not have any downstream stormwater facilities that would take the city's water. So in effect, the developer is going to be building their own ponds, and at their expense will be paying for capacity of public water, if you will. However, the city will have a perhaps 25% share of ongoing maintenance costs that stem from the runoff generated from the city's roadway. So the rain falls on our streets, and we're going to share in some of their out-of-pocket maintenance costs. In the event the city's water is diverted elsewhere, those responsibilities would go away. But yeah, that could be a while, and who knows what would happen. Ultimately, Mayor and Council, the development agreement that you have in your packet still needs some final engineering plans from the city engineer, and those will be inserted into the packet. A few cleanups here and there, but ultimately what we're asking for, if you would approve the development agreement that's in your packet, subject to any final amendments or needs from the city engineer and city administrator, and allow the mayor and the city administrator to sign that document.
So why are we approving it without all of the final review and approval by the engineer and administrator? That just seems like we should see those documents before we
Sure.
approve it. I'm not
I understand that. The vast majority, I shouldn't say probably all of those documents simply relate to engineering, design, are objective in nature, pipe sizing, locations of curb, elevations of road, some of those things. And those would just be submitted into the packet or into the agreement when they're ready. I do know it takes quite a bit of coordination between the developer's engineer and the city's engineer to come to, they've worked together great and in good faith, and everything seems to be lining up, but that just takes time to get signatures and the documents in place.
I see your point, but I have also seen mistakes, engineering mistakes come through that have been approved, and the council has been like, I don't remember that. Why don't I remember that? Oh, because it came after we approved.
Right. Well, I think it's a good point, council member. However, when the city receives the full design package with the elevations and the cut sheets and designs, frankly, we have to rely on the engineer to tell us they're ready to go. It's his signature, it's his or their PE signature and stamp that we have to trust. And if they've made a mistake, well, that happens. We're human.
But they're not held accountable.
Well, if they are, if there's a problem that comes up that's something was egregious or could have missed, shouldn't have been missed, well, there's remedies for that, and let's just hope not. And to be fair, I should say it like this, it's a great project, but in the big picture of the world, you folks have done much more complicated ones. This is a relatively short street extension with some relatively short utility extensions. Hope for the best, right?
Okay.
I agree with Suzanne. It's like you're trying to put the cart in front of the horse. Until we have all the documents to go over and look at it, I don't think we should approve anything. That's my opinion. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think if I recall, part of the reason why it was put on the agenda, because Eric and I did have a discussion about this, about being on the agenda because it was ready. I think it was at the developer's request to try to move things forward. Our next council meeting will be for 2 weeks, and there's the possibility that that paperwork could come in between now and then, and the development agreement could be signed and finalized before the next council meeting in 2 weeks, and so they could move forward with their project. So I think that was why the request was made to have the council approve the draft of the development agreement as it is, knowing that essentially the terms are there that we're concerned about, and the things that will be coming in next, these engineering things, are things that I wouldn't know to change as an attorney, you know, so likely that the documents we're waiting on aren't gonna be adjusted by this group because we're not the experts in that regard, but, so.
So there hasn't been any timelines set at this point?
Nothing committed to on the part of the city. Certainly the applicant who's present would prefer the council consider this evening.
So are they still looking to start this fall?
Yeah, they'd like to start in September.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, and 2
yeah,
weeks in construction season, right
is-
now, doesn't make a big difference.
Is the critical mass, but to the city attorney's point, I don't know if there's anything in the final engineering that, no offense to any of us, that we might know what we're looking at with great detail to say something is wrong.
We're not engineers.
We're not engineers, and, but in terms of the language and the commitments of paying the fees, who's responsible, who is paying your connection charges, your park dedications, your letters of credit, all of those things are clearly spelled out in the document.
I'll make a motion to approve the developer's agreement for final approach East Bethel Edition, subject to final review and approval by the city engineer, city administrator, authorize the mayor and city administrator to execute the final agreement. I'd like to add in there, and any final review from the city attorney.
I'll second that motion, because we did these agreements in the past in the same way, and so I'll second it. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I do have one question on this pilot, Eric. Well, question or scenario. So right now, the entity that owns this property is not a nonprofit, but there potentially will be a church in there. With the church being in there, are taxes still, normal taxes are still paid?
Yes, the taxation element falls to the owner,
Okay.
not their tenants.
Okay, so that leads me to the second question in the scenario that, okay, this is a flex building. Right now, the church is looking to use 2/3 of it, and the other portion would be commercial or some sort of commercial entity that, okay, now 5 years later, they sell to the church. Church keeps the same 2/3 use and still has a commercial entity, all that other third flex space. Does that become a whole? Does that pilot apply to the whole parcel, or is it a partial that they can?
I'm going to do my best to answer.
But you see where I'm
Yep.
going with this question.
But I will certainly defer to our county assessor, who would break that down a little bit further for us, or even potentially our city attorney. However, the place of worship, I think, exemption might only apply to those places, I mean, those specific spaces of place of worship. However, for what the nonprofit world might look like and what those rules are too, probably has a similar caveat that it has to be actually used by that entity for their 501c3 purpose. But if they have a tenant of the church, how that will all have to align, I would be pretty confident to say the county is going to extract, from a valuation standpoint, those amounts that are due under the annual levy, and then the city would get what it's due under the pilot agreement, in some way, shape, or form, certainly.
No, I would agree with that. It'd be, the county assessor would determine that and we'd go along with it. So I think it makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay. Motion passes. Item G, City Administration.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, before you this evening is a notary policy. We discussed this on the June 22nd work meeting. And currently, East Bethel does not have a notary policy. And we thought it was prudent to put one together that would kind of define the form and function of those that have notary capability here in the city council, or in the city hall rather. And we have that policy before you here. In the work session, a large part of the discussion was about a recent meeting that our staff had, where they were introduced to the current practices that we have may not be in the best interest of the city in terms of some of the documents that they're signing. They may not have the right to sign those documents, or should be signing those documents. And so currently right now, on average, we make about $30 a year on notary services, so it's insignificant. And if it was $300,000, you might assume the risk, but at $30, you probably don't want to assume the risk. So we did include in the notary policy here kind of the purpose of the document, the established standards and procedures. We identified kind of what's going to be required of those that hold the ability to be a notary, the different types of documents that are signed, and you know, kind of identifying those oaths or affirmations or permit applications, you know, candidate filings, things of this nature are all identified in here. And what's not identified in here, essentially, we are not going to be providing those services to the public as a service that somebody can come in and have find a notary. There's other notaries out there that they can locate, but we certainly need a notary in the city hall to perform the notary work that the city requires. So having this this policy somewhat identifies that, provides people some direction, and then you know, provides some clarity if there's lack of direction, you might say. Anyways, it's time for questions.
Anybody got any questions on this?
Looks pretty good.
It's pretty much just, we don't want to notarize every piece of paper that comes in here.
Right.
We want to protect our liability.
So we're just approving a resolution modifying the fees, not approving the,
So the resolution is for the fees. And then
policy.
just a motion under G1 to adopt the administrative policy, first of all. And then the resolution is to change the fee schedule that has the public fees that are in there that we will no longer be providing. So two motions.
okay. I'll make a motion to adopt the municipal notary public policy for East Bethel.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Motion passes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-42, modifying fees to be collected by the city of East Bethel.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item, firearms.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, before you this evening is a possible ordinance amendment regarding firearms and disorderly conduct. In a work session on August 10th, the council discussed Chapter 4 of the Firearms Ordinance, and at that time it was decided the ordinance was somewhat vague and might need further refining as it relates to nuisance discharge of firearms. We did a little research. Minnesota State Statute 609.72 defines disorderly conduct as engaging in offensive, abusive, boisterous, or noisy conduct, or use of offensive, obscene, or abusive language tending to reasonably arouse alarm, anger, or resentment in others. And those that violate the provisions of the statute may be guilty of a misdemeanor. We had received a complaint of kind of a all hours of the day reckless discharge of firearm, and kind of some of the fears that the neighbors had of even letting their kids play outside, not sure if there's bullets flying around or what's going on. And we believe that it may have been due to some neighborhood disputes and possibly some retribution there. But at any rate, I think in situations such as this, we kind of know that, well, you're not sighting in a gun, you're not, necessarily using it for hunting or something of that nature, but when you're intentionally trying to cause a disturbance like this, that our firearms ordinance should somewhat identify disorderly conduct, or at least give the opportunity for the city to contact the individual and say, this is our ordinance, you're kind of out of line, Currently, right now, there's nothing that says that. You gotta be 500 feet from a structure, I am, but I'm irritating everyone in the process. So, at any rate, it's before you here this evening. I did include kind of the firearms portion here and the language, nuisance discharge of firearms, consistent with the state law as indicated there. And again, it's whether or not it's charged, that's a discussion with the attorney, obviously, but I think it gives a little bit more teeth in terms of discouraging behavior that might be out of line.
Okay, I have looked at this and I don't think the penalty is clear enough. From what I've heard on this whole situation, I believe this is going to create more gunfire and not less. So here's what I'm thinking. I know how the court system works in East Bethel, and I know it takes months before somebody actually gets to court. And that's going to intensify the rebellion, the vengeful behavior. I think the penalty needs to say, and before I even say this, I want to say I am not pro taking away anybody's constitutional rights, but I think that the police need to get involved, and we need to give the police permission to temporarily confiscate that gun. And if it happens again, if he has 10 guns, then you have to keep taking them temporarily and let the judge give them back. And I know that's a possibility because I did kind of research it, but I don't know what it would entail.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. So, first off, this is a different type of scenario than what we're talking about, like when we have these ordinance violations where we come to council about whether we want to charge somebody for having debris or junk in their yard and that kind of stuff. This type of modification that's being made here, and the crime, the way it's defined, is such that law enforcement would be able to charge it right away. It wouldn't be something that has to come back to our office. They would be able to issue a citation to the person right then and there, and they'll be in court within a couple of weeks. Different than when we're talking about these land use things. So that's one thing. Secondly, as far as the ability to take the firearm, I mean, you mentioned that there are some ways of doing that. I mean, if a firearm is used in the commission of a crime to hurt or harm somebody, then you can perhaps take that one firearm, law enforcement could compensate as part of the crime. If you're thinking about asking or trying to take the entirety of somebody's firearm collection, there's a I was just going to say, there's a newly passed statute regarding emergency orders in order to do that, but that's only if the person is an immediate threat to themselves or to others, and it's a scenario that our office, we've done a handful of times in the appropriate circumstances. But I mean, I think the way this is set up is it does give law enforcement the ability to charge if they come upon the scene while that firearm is actually still being actively used. Law enforcement does have the ability to not forfeit it, but to compensate that firearm that's being used in the commission of a crime. So this is kind of a happy medium there, I think, with that.
Yeah, because I think it's a threat to public safety, even if it's not a threat to physical harm to somebody, you are causing trauma to those children in that neighborhood. And it could result in permanent PTSD. You don't know.
And I believe that that's the intent of this, going to this, is because our deputies didn't have anything to fall back on to really do anything with.
Right, but
And that's what the intent of this new language is.
if they think that that deputy can take their gun, they might think twice about violating this ordinance in the future, you know? Because I know these guys, they like their guns. And, I mean, I think they like their guns better than their wives. I'm telling you. It's
Oh.
true.
Mr. Berglund, did you just state that if the deputy believes that the firearm was used in a crime, that they can confiscate that firearm? Would this
can we put it in here?
citation as a crime be to that level that, based upon a deputy's powers of deduction, that they could then use this to, in a scenario, confiscate a certain firearm?
Yeah, a firearm used in the commission of a crime can be confiscated by law enforcement. This is defining the discharge of a firearm in a manner that is otherwise a nuisance or harassment of other people. So therefore, if the officer on scene determines that that crime's been committed and they have the ability to obtain that firearm, they can do that.
And I think that this should say that in the penalty block, and that's all I'm asking for, is that they may, that not they will, that they must, but, you know, upon their discretion, they may. And then they can see that, and, you know, when you send them, when you cite this ordinance, I think it'll make them think twice. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think if you want to consider that, I'd say maybe then table this and we can craft the language that says something along those lines. I wouldn't want to do it on the spot right here.
Oh, right, absolutely. So I'll make a motion to table this.
Second.
We have a motion, table it, second. Any further discussion?
How big is this issue with that certain neighborhood right now?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm not sure that we've had any complaints recently. That's not to say it couldn't happen tomorrow. But you know, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we may need to bring this back through planning then, if we make significant change to it.
Okay, so if, in a scenario where we approve this tonight, it would become law tomorrow, essentially, that the sheriff could enforce it?
We would need to publish it, and yes.
Okay. Can we amend it?
Anytime.
At our next meeting after that?
Anytime.
Because we're doing this to bring resolution to that neighborhood for potential harassment.
Right.
Can we pass what's here tonight and then still bring it back at our next meeting? The attorney will amend the language and we can pass a new version at our next meeting.
You can pass this tonight, and like Mr. Look just said, at any point in time you can amend it, so yes.
But then it will have to go to planning or not with the amendment.
We'll have to double check on that. You know, if it's a significant change, if it's a smaller change, perhaps not, but.
The main thing is it's gonna give the deputies discretion.
Right.
Right,
And,
right
Do
away.
something.
Right
and,
away.
and I can assure you that a violator probably doesn't read section 42.171 before going out and violating. I mean, they're gonna be educated by the officer. It'll be a learning opportunity, I'm sure. That, hey, I can take this firearm from you right now, so you're gonna comply or we're gonna ratchet it up, you know? And that might be what they need to say, okay, we're good, you know, not gonna do this anymore. But it gives the deputies a tool in their toolbox to be able to handle an out-of-control situation right now.
So I would like to incorporate your language but I also want to get this passed right away and then just have it come back.
Okay, I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
Jim, you're good with it?
Yep.
Okay, we'll need a new motion to go ahead with this, what's written now.
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance amendment regarding firearms and disorderly conduct.
I'll second.
Motion and second, any further discussion?
And so, Mark, if you'd like to work on some language that then we can bring it back
Yes,
at the next meeting.
I will do that.
All right, thank you, Mark.
Perfect.
No further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Staff report.
No, there's the
Mr. Mayor, we got one
advisory
more.
boards.
Oh, advisory board, excuse me.
One more here. Item 8.0G3, this is Advisory Boards and Commission Code of Conduct. In the work session on August 10th, Council discussed the creation of a possible code of conduct for advisory board of members and commission members. And the city of Orono was brought up as a example of a possible code of conduct document. So staff researched that. I made some modifications to it and have it presented for you here this evening. What I will say is I went through this, and a lot of you have too, as newly elected members. The League of Minnesota Cities puts on a day or two event that you go down and you, lack of a better way of saying it, you learn the do's and the don'ts. And it can be a little scary what the don'ts are, you know, in terms of what you should stay away from. As appointed members, there really isn't that option out there right now. And so this document here kind of gives just a bullet point type of this is what you need to be aware of, what our expectations are, and you know, it's without saying it, it's our expectation that it be followed. And again, it's a living document, can be changed at any time, but it's kind of a starting point at least for a code of conduct for advisory board members. As you see here, it's kind of gives a purpose and standards of conduct, touches on you know, personal gains, you know, soliciting gifts or favors, obviously things you can't do. Can't secure special privileges or anything like that. I believe there was someone in Minneapolis that, as I recall, got some contractor work for free and they got caught. Anyways, can't do that. You know, disclose to the public for personal gain, can't do that. Information is attorney-client privilege is confidential. Use of city logos, things of this nature. It's a lot of, I think anyone reading this would probably say, yeah, it makes sense. You know, it's not outrageous. And then if there's a complaint that's issued against somebody, there's a hearing process for that where people can defend themselves and say that's not at all what happened, or yeah, you're right, I did do that, or whatever the case is. And so you have that process as well. And I think it just kind of clearly defines, I think Orono did do a good job of clearly defining a reasonable code of conduct. Now, what I will say is that we changed Orono's from including elected officials that were in there. Elected officials have, I think, a different, you know, threshold, and that's being that they're elected, and you are responsible to the members of the public. Your conduct is evaluated every time you run for election. You know, are you out of line or are you not out of line, et cetera. And they have an opportunity to evaluate that every time you're up for election. There's some of you are familiar with censoring things of this nature. It's absolutely pointless. You could censor everyone on the board tonight and it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't invalidate their election certificate. And so that, as you know, combining the two, I think, confuses matters a little bit. And this kind of just zeroes in on advisory boards and commissions. And at some point later, if council wants to do an elected, code of conduct, that's certainly up to you. But I think as it relates to kind of a missing document, you might say, that helps newly appointed navigate the complexities of the position that they've been appointed to, I think this document does that. I think one person said, yeah, I got appointed, and next day I had to show up, and, you know, I didn't know what I was doing, you know. Well, we want to try and avoid that a little bit with this, so, open to questions.
Hey, Matt, who determines whether there's been a violation or not, and what the consequences can be imposed?
So if a violation occurs, generally, we would get a call here at the city, you know, so-and-so did this or said that, or whatever the case is. Then we would set up this, you know, hearing process. The council would be the hearing board to determine if that's, you know, if it's happened or didn't happen. Then the council would decide, because they're the appointing entity, what are we gonna do about it? You know, warning, you know, ask for you to resign, you know, that sort of thing. And obviously, it would be done confidentially and not a, you know, open to the public type of deal. But at any rate, the council is the ultimate deciding, as they are the appointment to the advisory boards.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I have a question, not so much about the code of conduct, but I think people put on planning commission and parks commission for the first time should have some kind of a mentor of a long-term standing. And I don't know if we need a policy for that, or if that should just be an informal thing that we, as a city, decide to do. But I do believe mentors are needed for some of these positions, especially planning, because that is a complicated position. And there's a lot of codes and stuff that they have to understand, and some of them might not even know where to go to look for it.
So would that be the liaison that's appointed, that they could take on that role?
I don't know what you mean.
The one,
The council liaison to planning or parks, where they are at every meeting?
Oh, I think it should be somebody on the planning commission themselves.
the only, I think that probably happens kind of the way it is. Maybe the chair reaches out to them and helps them understand. But what I would hesitate in doing there is, you've got, you know, say you got 5 members on a board, you can only have 2 people talk. Otherwise, you have an open meeting violation. And say the 2 of you talk, and then you call a third person, now you have a serial meeting violation. And so we want to be a little cautious about that. If the chair takes somebody under their wing, then they can't really talk to anyone else about, you know, those topics, unless it's in an open meeting. But you're right, it is a difficult situation. I've often referred to elected office as an education you cannot buy. You cannot buy that. You will learn things that no school will ever teach you. And so, yes, there is a learning curve. Council members, I always said it took 4 years to come up to speed before you really start, you know, making an impact on directions you want to go or policies you want to change. The rest of the time you are learning, and it's somewhat with a fire hose that you're learning from. So it would be good to have a mentor, but it would probably be best to have the liaison probably do that, I would say, because then that person doesn't serve on the board, and you're not in risk of open meeting law violations. So
Makes sense. It was just a suggestion anyways.
no, I think it's a good idea.
Just felt like
You don't know what you don't know, and people that help
Exactly.
you, that's great. Yeah.
On item N, we need a little edit. Still has City of Orono listed
Oh, does it?
at members.
Oops. All right, we'll make that change.
I mean, the statement's true that members shall explicitly state they do not represent the city council or the city of Orono, and they certainly wouldn't.
Well, they shouldn't be representing the city of Orono either.
No.
We can make that change, or if there's a motion to adopt with that change, we can make that change.
Yeah,
Good catch.
I would also like to add some links to the league website.
Okay.
Because part of this was educational, and just a quick search that I did on the league website, they have Planning Commission Guide. Learn ways the city may create, change, or discontinue a city planning commission. Provides information on appointments of members, commission powers and duties, and meeting rules, etc.
Excellent.
So there's that. They have a planning and zoning 101. They have some stuff that may apply more towards council, but I'll roll with it. Individual versus council authority, that covers some of the authorities. They have a link for resources for newly elected city officials, given that's more towards council members, but there still could be some information. I just did a quick search on this, but I think the planning commission guide should be, and if we can look up something for parks as well.
Can you shoot me a link on that? Just copy the link and email it to me. And then
Yeah.
I will, I'll include that in here.
So I'll make a motion to add the advisory boards and commissions code of conduct for the city of East Bethel with the changes that we discussed.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, staff report.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just a couple of items this evening. I wanted to give just an update on digitizing files. We have currently to date 7,215 files that have been copied. Every file can have between 10 and 20, every property can have between 10 to 20 files within it. And so currently we have about 20,000 pages that have been scanned and categorized and put into property addresses, and we are on our way. But what I will say is, of the roughly 6 months that we're working on this, we've got about a year and a half to go still. So there is no small amount of documents that date back that should be digitized. I say this because I think if I say it, it won't happen, but if we ever had a fire, we'd be in a lot of trouble because of the paper documents. They'd be absolutely gone. The history would be gone. So this digitizing is very important. We have a, you might call it a summer intern currently working in that position, and we met with the personnel committee this evening to kind of talk about what does it look like to extend that to potentially finish this project, and staff will be putting together some information and bringing that back to council for that part of it. The second thing is you may get phone calls this evening. We do not have live recording of these council meetings. Our DVR went south, and we did find one. It's in Nigeria, and it's a little difficult to get a hold of. So we are in the process of trying to contact the vendor to say, okay, we've got this old system. Is there anything that can get us online for a live? People like watching the live meetings. Is there anything we can try and band-aid together to make it work? I think a lot of the salespeople have moved on to 20 different variations since ours, and probably don't have the expertise on how to band-aid something together. So at any rate, we're working on it. We don't have a solution yet, and we're trying to find a solution, and we ask people to be patient because we do know that you can see the numbers. There's 10 to 20, 30 people that I don't know if they pop popcorn and watch this, but maybe it's the best show in town on Monday nights. But at any rate, we'll be working on that, try and find a solution, and give you an update on that if we do. So aside from that, it concludes my report unless there are any questions.
I have a question. Are those 20,000 scanned online now where we could search them if we want? Are they public, or it's all private, or what is
These are
that?
just on our drive right now.
Okay.
The goal is to get, we're hopefully working with Civics Plus here to put in a community development module, and that would give us the opportunity to put these things online so that, say, a realtor is, representing a property, needs to know when the septic was pumped last, and they could go online, pull up that address, go down to this plumbing file or septic file and say, oh, that was such and such a date, and answer their own question as opposed to calling in here and,
Right.
getting it online helps us because then we can quickly source that as well. Walking into the back and digging through endless piles of paper to find it is not helping anyone. So it takes a very long time. But yeah, it's a great project. Wish we had jumped on it earlier, but it's a long journey starts with one step, I guess. So we're getting there.
All right, council reports.
I don't have anything.
Nothing?
There's nothing on it.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion adjourn.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.